Welcome to this explainer. I want you to just step away from the noise of the modern world for a second. Take a breath and get ready to explore a mystery that is literally as old as the Earth itself. Today, we're going to look right past the stories we've all been told and pull back the curtain on the ancient truths hidden just behind our modern myths. We're diving in to nature's unseen intelligences.
So let me ask you something. Fairies? Do they really exist? I mean, it's a question that instantly triggers a reaction, right? But what if everything you think you know about that word is fundamentally incomplete?
Let's start with Section 1, Beyond the Modern Myth and the Forgetting of Ancient Voices.
To really get this, we have to acknowledge how our intensely logical, modern society has kind of forgotten how to listen to the natural world. There's a massive divide here. On one hand, you have the modern perspective where fairies have been completely dismissed as just imagination, shrunken down into harmless little winged creatures trapped in children's books and cartoons. But then, you have the ancient perspective. Long before we decided they were just fiction, cultures all over the earth respected these entities as an unseen but very real reality. They didn't see them as fairy tales at all. They saw them as physical beings, existing just a hair's breadth beyond our ordinary human perception.
Moving into Section 2, the energetic intelligences and rediscovering the Fae.
Okay, let's dive into this and shift our perspective to something a lot more powerful. If we look deep into Celtic traditions, we find a very different definition of the Fae. Ancient traditions describe them as a hidden dimension woven directly into the natural world. These definitely weren't cute little bugs you'd catch in a jar. They were understood to be unseen intelligences, basically these formidable spirits of nature that were deeply connected to the energetic fabric of the earth itself. The mountains, the rivers, the ancient trees, they were all believed to actually contain these conscious forces.
And because they were so tied to the raw, untamed power of nature, the old stories came with some pretty severe warnings. Ancient Celtic traditions warned that the Fae were incredibly powerful and deeply unpredictable. They existed in this hidden dimension, but they commanded immense respect because they could actually influence human emotion, they could alter your luck, spark sudden inspiration, and even bend reality itself. You absolutely did not cross them lightly.
People who were sensitive to this energy claimed they weren't just making these beings up, they could actually sense their physical presence. In moments of profound stillness, people would report witnessing strange lights out in the silent woods. They'd feel these sudden, completely inexplicable shifts in the atmosphere, hear whispers in the quiet, and just experience this overwhelming feeling of enchantment. Now, today, we'd probably just call that having an active imagination. But ancient people? They called it contact.
That brings us to Section 3, Vibrations and Hidden Frequencies, the Science of the Unseen. This is where we cross that fascinating bridge between ancient mysticism and modern logic. The absolute crucial question here is this. What if fairies aren't physical beings in the same way that you and I are physical? What if, instead, they exist as energetic intelligences, vibrating at hidden frequencies, operating just outside our normal, everyday spectrum of perception? To put that into perspective, think about radio waves. Right now, there are countless invisible radio waves passing straight through the room you're sitting in. You can't see them at all, but if you have a receiver tuned to the exact right frequency, suddenly you hear music or voices. Now, apply that same logic to the fairy realm. Just because these dimensions exist beyond the narrow band of our daily human awareness doesn't mean they aren't broadcasting all around us. Just because we lack the tuning to see something definitely doesn't mean it isn't there.
Which leads perfectly into Section 4, the unconditioned observers, children and animals.
So, if the modern adult mind is tuned to the wrong frequency, who is naturally tuned in? Well, as the saying goes, young minds are less conditioned by rigid logic. They move naturally through imagination, wonder, and emotional openness. Mystics have believed for a long time that these exact states of mind are what actually allow contact with subtle realms. It gives us a really fascinating framework for why children are the ones who frequently report seeing luminous beings or hearing whispers out in nature. Their receivers just haven't been muted by society yet.
And it's not just kids either. Think about instinctual animal reactions. We've all heard of or seen a dog barking furiously into a seemingly empty, totally silent forest, right? Or horses that absolutely refuse to cross a perfectly clear path. Or maybe you've noticed birds suddenly falling completely dead silent in one specific, localized area. Well, ancient folklore interpreted these deeply eerie animal behaviors not as random quirks, but as definitive signs that unseen beings were near. Animals, much like children, are unconditioned observers.
Section 5, where the veil thins, charged places of energy.
So we know who might be able to see them, but where do these encounters actually happen most often? Let's look at the geography of the unseen. There are certain physical locations on Earth that seem deeply charged with this lingering energy. We're talking deep, ancient forests where the canopy totally blocks out the modern world, crumbled ancient ruins untouched by time, mystical stone circles, hidden, secluded waterfalls. When you step into these areas, the ones totally untouched by modern noise, it honestly often feels as if the atmosphere itself is alive, just humming with a quiet intensity.
In spaces like these, sensitive individuals repeatedly describe a highly specific emotional resonance. They talk about feeling watched, but not necessarily in a threatening way. They feel suddenly and wildly inspired or just enveloped in a really strange, profound peace. These are the specific locations where the barrier between our ordinary world and the unseen is famously and almost perilously fragile.
And all of this builds into something truly astonishing when you look at the history of shared global encounters. Glowing humanoid figures, dancing lights, unexplained time distortions where hours literally feel like minutes, mysterious music drifting in from nowhere. The truly staggering part is that across centuries and across continents, among people who had absolutely zero connection to one another, we see reports of the exact same phenomena, the exact same highly intelligent, mysterious encounters.
Which really brings us to this incredibly heavy, lingering question. Could all of humanity, across such drastically different cultures and timelines, simply be repeating the exact same illusion? Or is something fundamentally real, hidden just beneath the surface of the myth? Let's wrap up with Section 6, the choice to notice, and returning to intuition.
As we get to the final, deeply philosophical takeaway of this explainer, we really have to confront this reality. The modern world teaches people to stop believing. From a very young age, we're heavily conditioned by society to prioritize the material, the measurable, and the strictly logical. We're essentially taught that if a machine can't prove it or math can't calculate it, it just holds no value.
But here is the dramatic shift in perspective. Belief may not create the phenomenon.
It may simply allow you to notice it. I really want you to think about that paradigm shift for a second. The magic, the energy, the fae, they might have literally always been there. Belief isn't some magic spell you cast to make fairies appear out of thin air. Belief is just you finally turning the dial on your receiver and tuning your frequency back into a channel that has been broadcasting since the dawn of time.
Because at the end of the day, the universe is filled with mysteries that logic alone simply cannot contain. Fairies and the energetic intelligences of nature belong to a layer of reality that doesn't demand your scientific proof. It demands your intuition. It reveals itself only through stillness, emotional resonance, and a truly open mind.
So the very next time you find yourself deep within a silent forest, or walking through a moonlit place that feels totally untouched by time, just remember that the veil is thin, and somewhere out there in the quiet, something might still be watching. The only question left is, will you look?